Chapter 9 Azure Dragon and White Tiger. The off-road vehicle moved slowly. Bai Mo used his extraordinary vision to look around, trying to find some clues, but the dense forest obviously severely obstructed his sight. Although after a round of physical modification, the usage time of the all-knowing eye had been greatly extended, it was still far from being able to be used at will because the use of the ability came at the cost of physical exertion. Wasting physical strength in potentially dangerous places would have dire consequences, so Bai Mo could only choose to perform detailed scans in places that he felt were likely problematic but couldn't see due to obstructed vision. As expected, he quickly noticed something strange. It had been too quiet along the way, as if the entire forest had fallen asleep. In Bai Mo's perception, he found that some of the animals he could observe were hiding in tree hollows, some were in holes dug underground, and even the few animals that hadn't entered holes were hiding. Even small animals were nestled under thick layers of dead branches and leaves, and without exception, they had all fallen into a deep slumber. Herbivorous animals were often surrounded by a large number of plants, while carnivorous animals often had several carcasses of other animals around them. Some of the carcasses had bite marks, appearing incomplete. Evidently, a rather brutal struggle had occurred earlier. Based on the number of observed carcasses and the proportion of carnivorous animals in the forest ecosystem, Bai Mo estimated that a quarter to a third of the animals in the forest were missing. It seems my timing for departure was quite good, choosing to leave after this bloody battle. If I had rushed to the volcano immediately after arriving in Hawaii, I would have encountered much greater trouble. While pondering, he controlled the car speed and direction, allowing it to slowly advance towards the destination along the path that seemed to cut through the forest. But even with such bizarre occurrences, it didn't make him abandon the idea of going to the foot of the volcano. Because according to his estimation, as his cultivation increased, the demand for spirit stones would likely grow, and the spirit stones he currently possessed would probably only last for less than a month. In order for his dream of pursuing extraordinary power to continue, he wanted to make a trip to the volcano no matter what, having already prepared himself to overcome all difficulties. Following the GPS instructions, Bai Mo stopped the car again about 1 kilometer from the volcano and opened the window to feel the concentration of spiritual chi in the air. From his sensation, he could roughly judge that the concentration of spiritual chi at that moment and place had reached 60 to 70% of his usual chi cultivation concentration. Exposed to such a high concentration of spiritual chi, he instinctively took a deep breath. Even though he no longer relied solely on oral and nasal breathing, some instincts could not be changed. Immersed in the ocean of spiritual chi, Bai Mo felt every cell in his body cheering, and a satisfied smile naturally appeared on his face. However, Bai Mo quickly regained control of his emotions and continued to drive forward. After regaining his composure, he began to ponder his own situation again. In the 2 months since he began to cultivate, he estimated that the number of times he had considered his own circumstances exceeded the total of the previous 20 years. In his previous life, he had an indifferent attitude towards many things besides studying and reading novels, dealing with them casually. Eating, just enough, dressing, just enough to go out unnoticed, socializing, practically zero. Ever since his parents passed away, he had become obsessed with various online novels. His daily life outside of textbooks was novels. To him, the beautiful structure behind the hidden world, revealed by the knowledge in books, was as fascinating as the intricate worlds in novels. All of this led him to devote most of his energy to his world of thought, rather than the mundane realities. But everything changed with his discovery of the use of spirit stones. Everything that had once existed only in fantasy began to surface. This feeling of bearing a great secret yet being unable to confide in anyone brought immense pressure to Bai Mo, forcing him to focus his attention on himself, examining himself daily, considering secrecy, evolution, and survival. If nothing unexpected happened, if this disguised life continued for a few more years, Bai Mo would at least suffer from schizophrenia, or possibly even a complete mental breakdown. As someone who had never undergone relevant training, the pressure he bore was greater than that of a spy lurking in a foreign land or an enemy war zone. A spy at least had a superior to contact, though not necessarily trustworthy, but he couldn't tell anyone the truth. He could only constantly wear a mask and act, slowly advancing towards that distant goal of being able to be an enemy to all nations. Therefore, in the uninhabited area at the foot of the volcano, where spiritual chi was abundant, Bai Mo's mind could relatively relax, because at least he didn't have to pretend to be an ordinary person all day long. Another few hundred meters ahead is the foot of the volcano. The spiritual chi concentration here is already on par with my usual cultivation. If all this spiritual chi is heated and released by spirit stones, then the spirit stones hidden beneath the volcano must be an astronomical number to form such a vast spiritual chi domain. Although such a vast spiritual chi domain is almost invisible, the anomaly in the forest cannot be hidden for long, and the excessive silence is also equally attention-grabbing. At most, in a few more days, the strange phenomenon in the forest will be exposed to the world, and the United States of America authorities will send people to investigate. With their professional quality, if they follow the clues, the truth will come out within a week, and it's possible that the existence of spirit stones will also be discovered. As a tourist, as long as I stay as far away from the center of the vortex as possible, I can ensure my safety. Now I must seize this last chance before it's exposed. It will be very difficult to come back here after official intervention, and I cannot gamble on the possibility of spirit stones existing elsewhere. After completing his plan, Bai Mo walked towards the volcano where he felt the concentration of spiritual chi was highest. Evidently, this volcano was not a tourist area, so there were neither stairs for climbing nor safety ropes. Lacking mountaineering equipment, he could only rely on his extraordinary physique to forcefully climb the slope. As Bai Mo ascended the mountain, he used his ability to observe the beasts nested in their caves. Perhaps due to the higher concentration of spiritual chi, they had mostly awakened from their slumber. But fortunately, perhaps the beasts knew that their days of enjoying the high concentration of spiritual chi undisturbed were numbered, so they all stayed in their caves, too lazy to move, not causing him much obstruction. The higher he climbed, the more alarmed he became, because the animals entrenched on the path grew stronger. The entire mountain peak was a strong man's pyramid. After reaching halfway up the mountain, the evolved beasts gave him a somewhat dangerous aura, but thankfully, they all stayed in their dugout caves, enjoying the spiritual chi baptism. As a mutated creature more powerful than themselves in their eyes, Bai Mo encountered no obstacles even when he reached halfway up the mountain. These animals, which had become much more spiritual under the guidance of spiritual chi, also possessed rudimentary sensory abilities. They could sense that the beast passing by was not to be trifled with, and fighting would be meaningless except for affecting the absorption of spiritual chi. Thus, he climbed to the summit step by step, observed by the multitude of beasts. Upon reaching the summit, Bai Mo immediately felt a sense of alarm, so he quickly scanned the area with his eyes and found that the alarming auras belonged to two masters, a large python and a feline animal similar to a tiger. Are these going to evolve into an azure dragon and a white tiger? He muttered to himself. Where are the vermilion bird and the black tortoise? Seemingly different from the pythons in his memory, the snake was colorful all over, clearly having evolved such a body size from a small venomous snake, and the white tiger in Bai Mo's eyes was actually a feline animal with unscientific wings. To reduce the possibility of them attacking him, he also unleashed his chi with full force for the first time, creating a three-way standoff. After Bai Mo no longer suppressed himself, the azure dragon and white tiger tacitly acknowledged the existence of this powerful being, whose perception was no less than theirs. The spiritual chi resources on the mountaintop were sufficient, so there was no need to fight to the death. With the spiritual chi concentration nearly 5 times that at the foot of the mountain, the quality of the spirit stones here must be much higher than the samples his mentor casually collected at the foot of the mountain last time. So, he quickly collected all the surrounding spirit stones. If his military backpack hadn't been so full that it couldn't hold anymore, Bai Mo probably wouldn't have stopped. Taking an extra 100 pounds was not a big deal for him. After completing his primary objective of ascending the mountain, he began to quickly absorb spiritual chi. The spiritual chi concentration at the summit was excessively high. Even the spiritual chi concentration obtained during his daily chi cultivation with heated spirit stones was only 1/5 of what was here. The two beasts and one person were immersed in the spiritual chi feast. However, they were in their caves, while Bai Mo sat directly on the ground. This continued for most of the day. After continuously absorbing high concentration spiritual chi for most of the day, he had a profound, inexpressible feeling, as if his overall understanding of this world had deepened by another layer. When using the all-knowing eye to examine himself internally, Bai Mo found that his perception accuracy had improved again, and he could now see parts of the cellular internal operations. Chapter 10: The Bell of a New Era. After surveying various organelles, Bai Mo suddenly discovered an organelle he had never seen in previous biology textbook illustrations. After increasing the resolution of his all-knowing eye as much as possible, he finally discovered the function of this new organelle. This round organelle absorbs spiritual chi and then outputs another observable form of energy, which flows to every corner of the body, absorbed and utilized by various tissues, becoming the hard currency for energy exchange within the body. Meanwhile, the mitochondria, which originally supported all of the body's energy consumption, began to play a supplementary role. Bai Mo suspected that if development continued, This new organelle would likely completely replace mitochondria, taking over the heavy responsibility of energy supply and evolving them into a life form that no longer needs oxygen but relies on spiritual chi to survive. Since it's a new type of energy formed after spiritual chi is processed, let's name this energy spirit energy. He casually named this new energy from novels he had read. After absorbing high concentration spiritual chi in the volcano for most of the day, Bai Mo suddenly had a profound feeling. The spiritual chi would undergo a total eruption in half a day, at dawn, and after the eruption, everything would begin to change, and a new era would arrive. The beasts on the volcano also seemed to have more or less sensed this information, and they all exerted their utmost effort to absorb spiritual chi. But no matter how hard the people and beasts on the volcano tried, the seemingly endless spiritual chi continued to gush from the volcano, as if mocking their overestimation of their own abilities, like trying to drink up the entire ocean. After having this peculiar premonition, Bai Mo cherished the remaining half day even more, a time when he could fully absorb high concentration spiritual chi. While fully absorbing spiritual chi, he used his all-knowing eye to scan every corner of his body, trying to uncover more profound secrets of spiritual chi. More and more cells in his body developed organelles that could convert spiritual chi into spirit energy. The internal structure of his original energy absorption skin also underwent significant changes, transforming into a structure that could absorb spiritual chi better and faster, and other organs also evolved to varying degrees after absorbing spiritual chi. With the baptism of spiritual chi, each region of his brain underwent its own unique changes. The cell structure of the memory governing region became more robust, and its activity increased. From a macroscopic perspective, this enhanced Bai Mo's memory, allowing him to clearly recall many things he previously only had a vague impression of, though he was still far from photographic memory. The perception governing part, on the other hand, changed in conjunction with the corresponding sensory organs. Bai Mo's earliest X-ray vision ability and extraordinary eyesight, because the brain's perceptual system couldn't keep up, always had to be treated as two separate abilities, requiring separate activation. This led to him either choosing extraordinary eyesight to observe distant objects or X-ray vision to scan nearby objects, unable to unify them and combine their advantages. However, this time, the evolution of the brain's perceptual system along with his eyes combined the two abilities into an unrestricted vision with a radius of approximately 300 meters, allowing Bai Mo to observe everything he wanted within 300 meters, regardless of obstructions. Because this was particularly similar to the divine thought perception described in cultivation novels, he directly adopted the name, naming this vision divine thought, to replace his previous extremely juvenile-sounding all-knowing eye. But the changes in his vision seemed to go beyond that. Bai Mo found that the world he observed began to appear somewhat bizarre. Combining his knowledge of physics, he guessed that the evolution of his eyes seemed to have also broadened his visible light wavelength range, allowing him to see the infrared and ultraviolet worlds, perceiving more frequencies of light. In addition to vision, he also discovered that the region of his brain responsible for emotions had undergone some unknown changes. From his divine thought perception, he found that the cortical structure of the emotional region of his brain was undergoing some significant structural changes. But not being a brain scientist, Bai Mo couldn't infer the function of this evolved part from the structural changes, leaving it to future experiments to explore the results of the mutation. Just as he was meticulously examining each functional area of his brain, a boom suddenly echoed in his mind. The sound had no discernible source, seeming to resonate directly within his soul. It was a simple syllable, but Bai Mo felt from the sound that it was the bell tolling for the beginning of a new era. Without time to observe other changes in his body, he quickly directed his perception towards the volcano. He found that with his divine thought, which had a radius of nearly 300 meters, he couldn't perceive the changes deep within the volcano, just like when his vision was previously blocked. His perception was shielded by the excessively dense spiritual chi. Bai Mo was unsure how far the sound propagated, but if he could read the minds of all living beings on Earth, he would find that all creatures on Earth had heard the soul-stirring sound. After the bell of the new era tolled, violent spiritual chi began to surge out from the volcano. The nearly colorless spiritual chi surged out like a tsunami, directly impacting Bai Mo, as well as a dragon and a tiger that had been lingering on the mountaintop. Facing this impact, which was like the earth collapsing and the sky falling, all three were determined to hold on until the last moment. However, under the impact of the spiritual tide, they only lasted for a second before being swept away by the spiritual tide, carried down the mountain, and only stopped about 5 kilometers from the volcano. After a long while, Bai Mo, lying on the ground, finally came to his senses, propped himself up with his arms, and slowly began to recall what had just happened. Although he was later submerged in the spiritual tide and was carried by it, crashing into obstacles at high speed, leaving him covered in wounds, relatively speaking, the immense gains made him feel that all his previous evolutions were not worth what he gained in that single second of persistence. He learned the essence of spiritual chi and the existence of so-called spiritans from the spiritual tide. Bai Mo had always suspected whether spiritual chi was a special kind of energy, because his energy absorption skin was completely unable to absorb spiritual chi before he activated its oxygen absorption function, and now he finally had the answer. Spiritual chi is a substance that combines information, matter, and energy. Bai Mo decided to name the information contained within its spiritans. The essence of spiritans is information about all things in heaven and earth. When loaded onto energy and then combined with matter, it becomes spiritual chi. It is precisely because spiritual chi contains spiritans, which encompass information about all things, that it can induce living beings to evolve forward. However, why spiritual chi exists remains an unsolved mystery. Time returned to the moment Bai Mo faced the impact. The instant before the great tide crashed into him, Bai Mo felt as if he was surrounded by an endless stream of information, which seemed to contain the answers to all questions, past and present. However, before he could react and decide what information he wanted, he felt himself being swept away by the spiritual chi tide, so he had to haphazardly grab some of it. After calming down, Bai Mo lay on the ground, carefully examining this information, only to find that most of it was garbled and completely incomprehensible. The only parts he could discern were the composition of spiritual chi and the existence of spiritans. Moreover, regarding the essence of spiritual chi, only the compositional parts could be discerned. Information such as synthesis methods all became garbled. Although he felt it was a great pity that the harvest was incomplete, Bai Mo was still very satisfied with the gains from this adventure. Knowing the essence of spiritual chi and the existence of spiritans gave him a clear direction for his future, which was a greater gain for him than any material acquisition. Not only that, but a long-standing perplexing problem had been solved, which was a wonderful thing for a curious person. Then Bai Mo turned his gaze to his two brothers in misfortune. Under the influence of the dense spiritual chi, this dragon and tiger had already gained considerable sentience. Given time and enough worldly experience, coupled with the powerful strength they gained by seizing the initiative in the spiritual tide, both of them would undoubtedly soar to great heights as long as they didn't seek death. However, Bai Mo had no intention of taking them as his spirit pets. Chapter 11 Isolation. After all, this is reality, and there are no such things as blood recognition or soul contracts like in novels to guarantee the loyalty of spirit beasts. Hoping that an animal whose intelligence is no lower than one's own won't turn against you in the future probably just depends on luck. Although Bai Mo often saw protagonists in novels incredibly easily tame spirit beasts. Just by petting them a few times or roasting a delicious chicken, and then saying a few words like, "Follow me, you'll definitely have a future," they would instantly become his subordinates, complete with a permanent buff of max loyalty. But he admitted he didn't possess that kind of kingly aura that makes subordinates prostrate themselves at his feet with a single shake of his body, so he still chose not to do such a thankless task. On the other hand, he himself had never considered trying to kill them with the thought of, if I can't have it, no one else can, to see if there was anything like demon cores or magic crystals inside. First, not to mention that they, having also emerged from the spiritual chi tide, were less injured than Bai Mo due to their inherently strong bodies. He himself wasn't a battle-hardened berserker who grew stronger the more injured he was. With his current injured body, being able to achieve 50% of his combat power would be good. If they truly fought, it's hard to say who would end up as whose subordinate. Secondly, his experiences with the two beasts during this period also gave Bai Mo a feeling of we are all wanderers in the world. Why should we have met before? Ever since he had the great secret of chi cultivation, his mind had never truly relaxed. Every day, he had to scheme how to act so that no one would discover any issues. Many times, he could only hide alone, which, for someone who originally lived a simple life, brought immense pressure. Instead, facing the two wild beasts now, he could drop his mask, his disguise, and all his secrets to relax. He didn't want to destroy such a beautiful atmosphere. Grumble Bai Mo's stomach suddenly rumbled, and the intense hunger pulled him back from his relaxed state. This extended period of absorbing spiritual chi to transform his body had led to an enormous energy consumption. After understanding the composition of spiritual chi, Bai Mo roughly deduced the principle of spiritual chi transforming the body. When spiritual chi comes into contact with the body, the spiritans within the spiritual chi, carrying information of all things, induce the body to undergo structural changes more rapidly towards optimization. While the spiritual chi supply has not yet disappeared, the energy contained within it will first be extracted to support the structural changes of the body. However, if the spiritual chi supply stops, the energy required for the changes will be drawn from the body, which is why cultivating chi initially leads to hunger. Originally, after evolving the energy absorption skin, Bai Mo's demand for energy from food had already greatly decreased. But this time was different. Due to prolonged exposure to high concentration spiritual chi, too many structural changes were occurring simultaneously in his body. The energy consumed every moment was so vast that even his twice evolved energy absorption skin couldn't keep up, forcing him to resort to his original energy acquisition system, eating. Driven by hunger, he unhesitatingly left his spot and ran towards where he remembered parking the off-road vehicle. According to Bai Mo's previous preparations, the car contained enough supplies for a normal person to eat for 2 months. Anxious to find the food in the jeep, he completely disregarded the consumption of internal energy at this moment, fully using his divine thought to sense the off-road vehicle's location. In just under 10 minutes, he found the jeep, which had been washed about 3 kilometers away by the spiritual chi tide. Fortunately, apart from the car overturning, the supplies themselves suffered no damage. He ignored the mess on the ground, picked up a can, forcefully tore open the lid, and in a few swift motions, shoved the meat from the can into his mouth. Then he immediately tore open a pack of compressed biscuits, swallowed them down with water in a few gulps, and continued like this until he had eaten nearly 30 servings of food. Only then did his hunger subside considerably, and he began to ponder something that was actually quite strange. Why, after eating so much, did he not feel any stomach bloat? With this question in mind, he tried eating another piece of dried meat and then used his divine thought to observe his own body. He discovered that his digestive system had undergone earth-shattering changes. First, the small intestine, which slowly absorbs various nutrients, was gone. The function of nutrient absorption and classification was directly inherited by an organ, his stomach, which had been greatly strengthened. The dried meat completely dissolved in the spiritual chi-filled digestive fluid within 2 seconds. Useful substances were directly transported by the blood to the organs that needed them, while the remaining solid matter was transported to the large intestine. And most remarkably, the energy-containing substances in the ingested dried meat were directly squeezed by the spiritual chi digestive fluid to produce new spiritual energy, which was then directly supplied to various tissues that required spiritual energy. He found that many previously complex processes in his body had begun to simplify, reducing some steps. After losing the supply of glucose, and simultaneously induced by the spiritins in the spiritual chi, the mitochondria had completely evolved into the spiritual energy converter that cooperated with the energy absorption skin's function of absorbing spiritual chi. They also converted the absorbed spiritual chi into spiritual energy for the body's use. Theoretically speaking, Bai Mo was already a creature that didn't require oxygen. My current energy sources are mainly two. One comes from the digestive system, and the other comes from the energy absorption skin. He suddenly realized that apart from wearing human skin, the internal operating mechanisms of his body were becoming less and less similar to humans. For the first time, he questioned whether he could still be considered a human from a biological perspective. After alleviating his hunger, Bai Mo drove directly, planning to check out of the hotel as soon as he returned and then take a ride to the airport to prepare for his return to China. He knew Hawaii would soon become the center of the storm. After all, this spiritual chi surge had too great an impact, and it was easy for him to be identified as a potential insider. To avoid trouble, it was better to return to China quickly. On the way back to the hotel, Bai Mo saw the azure dragon and white tiger frantically hunting due to hunger. Presumably, the evolution brought by the spiritual chi greatly enhanced their senses. They could feel that Bai Mo's car contained a large amount of food, so both the tiger and the snake eyed Bai Mo's car eagerly. However, seeing Bai Mo in the car and sensing that he was an opponent of the same rank, clearly not easy to deal with, they still hesitated. Bai Mo in the car also knew that these two were, at their core, still wild beasts. Although their intelligence had increased, they still followed a savage path, and their values were still in a primitive stage. Taking what they wanted and snatching what wasn't given was their current way of thinking. Restraining desires was basically a joke; they could pounce at any moment. To shake off these two big troubles, Bai Mo directly threw almost all the remaining supplies in the car to them. Then he grabbed the last pack of dried meat and demonstrated to them how to tear open the packaging and eat the dried meat inside. Seeing the dried meat, the two beasts' eyes went wide. They each grabbed the pack of dried meat that Bai Mo had thrown over, and imitating Bai Mo, one used its claws and the other its teeth to tear open the packaging, swallowing the dried meat inside in one gulp. Watching them tear open package after package of food, eating intently, Bai Mo floored the accelerator and sped towards the hotel. As he sped away, the two beasts merely raised their heads and met his gaze as he looked back. Completely unlike the terrifying silence of the forest on the way there, on the way back, the forest Bai Mo perceived was filled with madness and slaughter. Countless hungry animals began to kill and devour each other to satisfy their desire for evolution. A strong scent of blood permeated the forest, making it particularly frightening. However, Bai Mo had no mind to pay attention to these things at this moment. Exhausted, he only wanted to take all his gains and return to China as soon as possible to prepare for the potential impact to come. But, according to Murphy's law, bad things usually happen. When Bai Mo returned to the hotel, he saw bad news. After learning about the spiritual chi tide outbreak in Hawaii, the U.S. authorities directly blockaded transportation to Hawaii Island, citing concerns that the unknown gas might contain infectious viruses and temporarily suspending all transportation in and out of Hawaii Island. While at this time, the spiritual chi had already permeated every part of the island.